years ago. It's mentioned in the Quran when Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, all you who have faith, people of Iman, إِذَا نُودِيَ لِلصَّلَاةِ مِنْ يَوْمِ الْجُمْعَةِ, when the call is made on the day of Friday. Jum'ah also means Jama'ah, day of congregation. فَاسْعَوْا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ, therefore hasten to the remembrance of Allah. Therefore, we begin by entering to a state of remembrance, a state of dhikrullah. And the Prophet, in fact, in many ahadith, the Prophet said, والسلام, that when you go to the prayers, you should not run and rush. You should to go with sakinatu wa'afatin wa waqar. Sakina means this kind of peace, which Allah says He descends the sakina upon the mu'mineen. Afatin, with a sense of self-dignity, and waqar means like gravitas. So some of the companions said, Ya Rasulullah, even if we are late, says, even if you are late. So when you combine this hadith with the command in the Quran to hasten, as'aw, sa'i, you know this word from the sa'i, between Safa and Marwa, to strive to the remembrance of Allah, it means that the purpose of this Jum'ah, fundamentally and most importantly, is for the purpose of remembering Allah. Some scholars have said this dhikrullah is ambiguous. Remembrance of Allah, who is the rememberer and who is the remembered? Who is the dhakir and who is the madhkur, as we say in Arabic? Is it we remembering God, or is it God remembering us? Ibn Kathir says in his tafsir, the best tafsir of the Quran is the Quran to explain the Quran. Allah says in the Quran, another commandment is Amr. Udhkuruni adhkurkum. Remember me, and I will remember you. Ibn Ata'illah, who was a great Maliki scholar in Egypt, Alexandria, that's why it's called Ibn Ata'illah al-Iskandari, means Alexandrian. He was also the third sheikh of the Shadali Tariqah. And he says, begin, Udhkurullah, begin to remember Allah, where you are the dhakir and Allah is the madhkur, where you are the rememberer and Allah is the one remembered, until you reach the stage where Allah is the rememberer and you are the remembered, where Allah is the dhakir and you are the madhkur. So when you say Allah, 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 or remember Allah, what does dhikr mean? It's a very rich word. It means many things. The salah is a dhikr. Because the Quran says, فَاسْعَوْا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. It doesn't say, فَاسْعَوْا إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ. It's فَاسْعَوْا to the remembrance of Allah. The Quran refers to the whole Quran as dhikr. And the purpose of every aspect of our worship, of our faith, of our religion, the fuqaha, the scholars of Islamic law, said that every commandment in law has what is called a illah. Illah in this case means an operative cause of the law. So when Allah says, for example, tell the believing women to cover their cleavages so that they will not be disturbed. People won't whistle at them and bother them and stuff like that. Therefore, the disturbance is the reason for the law. So therefore, some scholars say, if wearing a hijab results in you being disturbed, then don't wear it. Because the letter of the law has as its purpose the objective. The objective is more important than the letter of the law. For example, Allah says in the Quran, هو سماكم مسلمين. Allah has called you Muslimin. في هذا ومن قبل. ومن قبل وفي هذا. From before and in this, meaning the Quran. ليكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا وتكون الشهداء على الناس. So that the prophet, the messenger, becomes a witness to you and you become a witness to people. So that means that being a Muslim or Islam, being called Muslims, Allah has given us the name Muslims not as an end in itself, but towards another objective. That we become witnesses over people and that the Rasul becomes a witness over us. Now what's fascinating, this verse, which is the last verse of Surah Al-Hajj, has a very similar verse in the very middle of Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah says, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. We have made you a people or a community that is wasata. Wasata means in the middle. It can mean moderate. It can mean not extremist. It can mean central or centrist. Mainstream, whatever you want, however it is, the idea of wasat. Wasat means the center of something. لِتَكُونُوا الشُّهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَلَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. So that you will be witnesses over people and the Prophet a witness over you. The order is shifted, but the content is the same. So therefore, these two verses link. And this verse, by the way, is number 146 in Surah Al-Baqarah. And there are 292 verses, 286 verses in Surah Al-Baqarah. This is verse number 143. This is exactly the middle point, the half point of Surah Al-Baqarah. Allah tells us He has made us a ummatan wasata for the same purpose that He called us Muslims. Therefore, we see a linkage between being called Muslims, between being an ummatan wasata, and that the purpose has to do Could you lower the feedback, please? Thank you. It has to do with witnessing over people and the Prophet witnessing over us. But what I want to draw your attention to is that the verb, the vocabulary of the Quran here is the word shuhada and shaheed. The Prophet is, and the fundamental rukn or commandment and how we become Muslims is to do what? Is also an act of shahada. Ash-shahada an la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. So we see a picture forming here in our minds between being called Muslims, the purpose for being called a Muslim, the purpose being called a moderate, wasata, and linking it to actions of shahada. Now we know that a Muslim is to shahada la ilaha illallah. But Allah says He called us that also so that we also are witnesses over people and the Prophet witnesses over us. So there seems to be a kind of a circle that is being drawn here. We witness Allah, we are witnesses over people, and the Prophet is witnesses over us. I don't claim to know completely what the full meanings of this is, but you can see this is very rich and very pregnant with meanings. I want you to think about this, brothers and sisters. This is important. This is important because if you don't understand your religion, then, we're no better than robots. I mean, a tape recorder can recite Quran better than I can. All your smartphones are smarter than I am. But that smartphone is not going to be resurrected on the day of judgment and judged. I am, you are, we are. So while we strive to be technically accurate, technically beautiful in the recitation, in our performance of the actions of our faith, there's something deeper. As I've said here before, and I've said in many other places, you perform 2 rakats of Fajr exactly the way Rasulullah does it. The same movements, the same surahs. When I ask, is your value of your prayer same as Rasulullah? Usually by 75 or 80% to 25%, people say, no, my prayer can't be the same value as that of Rasulullah. Well, why not? How can you make the value of your worship better? There are only 24 hours in a day. There are people who make $15,000, $20,000 a year. There are people who earn $100,000 a year. There are people who earn millions of dollars a year. I wish I were one of those. Never mind the dunya. Apply this kind of thinking in our spirituality, in our religion, in our deen. It's not the number of prayers you do. It's the quality of your prayer, the value of your prayer. How much will Allah pay you in the currency of the day of judgment? Let's imagine that there's a currency in the day of judgment, the currency of heaven. Okay, if you make this much, you go to heaven. If you don't make this much, you go to hell. If you make more, you go to the nicer neighborhoods. There's 7. We are told there are 7 layers of paradise. So you want to go to the most exclusive, where the Anbiya and the Salihin and the Awliya are. So how can you maximize your religious net worth, so to speak? It's about worshipping smarter, worshipping better, so that the value of your salah, the value of your ibadah becomes more like that of Rasulullah, because he is our benchmark. He is our exemplar, our uswatun hasana. That we have to. He is the way to give us. If you do what he does, then you are a insan kamil. And who doesn't want to be insan kamil over here? Well, maybe some of you don't think about it, but I know I do. I know Koneta is striving to be insan kamil. He struggles with these issues, as I do. I'm sure many of you do too. So remember, you are Muslim for an objective. The objective has to do with being a witness. And the quality of your witness. That is why you will often hear many people, when I was a young boy and young man, I would hear our Egyptian khatibs who say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah shahadata abdin. We say, we bear witness that there is no God but Allah, the shahada of a servant of God. Why the shahada of a abd? Because there are many qualities of shahada. There's the shahada of the munafiq, of the hypocrite. There's the shahada of a child that doesn't know what he's talking about, but what she's talking about, just pronouncing the words. There's the shahada of the beginning Muslim. There's the shahada of the mu'min. There's the shahada of the more exalted people. And there's the shahada of the people of knowledge. There's the shahada of the angels. And the shahada of Allah Himself. And how do I get this? From the Quran. Allah says in the Quran, شَهِدَ اللَّهُ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُوَ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ وَأُولُو الْعِلْمِ قَائِمًا بِالْقِسْطِ. all of you who read the Quran have read this passage. And what surprises me is no matter how many times I read the Quran, there's always a verse that will hit me like it never hit me before. And I says, how come I didn't see this before? This is why Allah talks in talking about the unbelievers. He says, you put a veil over their eyes and over their ears as a covering, so they don't get the Quran when they hear it or when they read it. Well, guess what? I got veils too. We all have veils. Because if I didn't have those veils, I would have seen all those things the first time I read the Quran. But it seems that Allah unveils or helps unveil my seeing and my hearing and my understanding in proportion to my striving and in proportion to what I have earned. The rewards you get are not only in the Akhirah. The best reward is the reward of Iman and faith and Ihsan in this life, where you do good, not only because of the Akhirah, because of the pleasure that it gives you in satisfying Allah. I remember a friend of mine telling me once he was an Orthodox Jew and became a Muslim. He was my closest friend until he passed away, 1988 he passed away, almost 30 years ago now. And he says, he used to, for a while he didn't have a faith and he would eat pork and stuff like that and even drink alcohol, a good glass of wine. And he said, I had to stop eating pork, and I think nowadays the issue of health is not an issue. But you know what? It's like, even though I don't understand the reason why, it's like, if my wife likes me dressed in a blue tie instead of a red tie, I will wear it because I love her, and she is happier when I do something that she loves. Even though to me, there's no logic behind why a blue tie is better than a green tie or a yellow tie. So if Allah wants me to do this, it gives me pleasure to please Allah by obeying His commandments. This is wow, what an insight. But to give me pleasure, to derive pleasure from obedience to God. The Prophet said in the hadith which all of you know, or most of you know for sure, that the three things I enjoy the most, I'll give it in my order, okay? So it'll surprise you. Is perfume. He loves perfume. The joy of women. He enjoyed sex with his wives. And salah. Now, how many of us get as much joy from sex as we do from salah? How many of us get any kind of pleasure when we do salah? How many of us do salah as a burden? Now, to me, if the Prophet is my exemplar, and I want to follow the sunnah of the Prophet, I have to, as a young boy who began praying and did it just mechanically because my father was, an Imam and blah, 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 and doing it out of peer pressure, to doing it out of pleasure, to doing it out of a sense of commitment to God, but out of pleasure. It gives me pleasure to pray. Not all, I admit, doesn't always happen that way. But that to me is one of the ways by which I should measure the quality of my faith, the quality of my maqam, the quality of the value of my prayers, the value of my acts of ibadah, of worship. If I can get as much pleasure from doing salah as making love to my beloved wife, man, that's maqam of Rasulullah. I'm away before getting there yet. The Prophet said in a hadith that the 2 rak'ats of Fajr are dearer to me than the dunya and all that is inside of it. Now that means if you approach the Prophet and says, you know what, Rasulullah, here's $100 million. Give up praying the 2 rak'ats of Fajr. I'm so sorry, I'm guilty of doing what I tell others not to do. Would he take it? If you offered the Prophet $10 billion, don't pray the 2 rak'ats of, you can pray the other 4 prayers, but don't pray those 2 prayers. Would he take this offer? He would not. I'm not so sure if you offered me that amount, whether I would not take it. I could buy the building in the Bronx. I could buy this burger. I could do a lot of good things. And the Prophet said, the 2 rak'ats of Fajr are dearer to me, are more precious to me than the world and all that is in it. So you read this hadith, apply it to yourself, and say, oh wow, I'm really far from, and test yourself by saying, if somebody came to me and offered me, $10 million, and I have financial needs, that's the test. And we'll all be tested, brothers and sisters. Allah has said the very purpose of His creation is to test us. In Surah Al-Mulk, Allah begins, تبارك الذي به الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. Glory be to the one in whose hands is al-mulk, the kingdom or kingness, or the power or the ownership. And He's capable of everything, who created death and life in order to test you which of you are best in actions. So the purpose of our life is to be tested. So don't complain. Don't complain about your tests. Because we signed on the dotted line. Before we came, Allah said, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? We said, yes. Okay, so when you go, don't forget me. Okay? So we knew in our subconscious why we were created. So the more you are tested, like in school, you pass the test, you go to the next level. Pass this, you go to the higher level and a higher level. So the process, the journey of tadayyun, of faith, of religion, of religious practice, of religiosity, is to be tested, to go to the next level, to get more rewards, to get an unveiling from the meaning of a verse or another. So, to go back to this theme, شَهِدَ اللَّهُ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ. Allah Himself does the shahada. So when I first read this as Allah does shahada, I thought shahada was a human action. So I had to reinvert my structure, because as well, is Allah imitating us? Allah's command us to shahada says, that's a good idea, I'm going to do it too. That doesn't make sense to me. Obviously, Allah is inviting us. I had to conclude by this kind of logic that Allah is inviting us to perform an act of God Himself. شَهِدَ اللَّهُ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا هُ وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ وَأُولُو الْعِلْمِ. Allah Himself bears witness to Himself. Now in Arabic, because of the grammar, you can, for purposes of emphasis, what do you want to emphasize in the beginning of the sentence? So, شَهِدَ اللَّهُ, emphasizes, puts the emphasis on the shahada. You can say, Allahu yashhadu annahu la ilaha illa. You can say that too. The emphasis on Allah. This emphasis on shahida, witnesses God that there is no God but He. It's like, hey, reminding us, pointing to us the fact that Allah Himself performs this act of shahada. Then as I realized that, I saw that Allah actually says that He also does salah. Okay, in every Jum'ah you hear, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi, ya alladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allah does salah on the Prophet. And Allah does salah on all of us. هو الذي يصلي عليكم ليخرجكم من الظلمات إلى النور. He's the one who does salah on you to remove you from darkness into light. So, I mean, Allah, of course, to me, Allah does ruku' and stuff like that, but the angels do. The salah, our salah is given to us when the Prophet went up to heaven on the night of the Isra and Mi'raj, and he saw the angels in different levels of heaven, infinite rows of angels standing, praising Allah, infinite rows of angels in the ruku', infinite rows of angels in the sujood. And when Rasulullah came with Jibreel and the angels set up, greeted Rasulullah and went back into sajda. That's why we have two sajdas in one rak'ah. And therefore the Prophet was so taken by this optics, by this image. And because of his love for it, the choreography, the movements and positions of the angels become part of our salah. So when Allah says, commands us to do the salah, what you're doing is you're performing an act that God Himself performs and the angels themselves perform. So now let's go back to Shahada. Shahid Allahu annahu la ilaha wal malaika. Allah bears witness, and so do the angels, and so do the people of ilm, people of knowledge. قائما بالقسط, in order to establish qist. Qist means equity, justice, rightness, correctness. So the Shahada has an objective. Our being called Muslims has an objective of filling the loop of the action of Shahada. And Allah making us a moderate people is also for the act of Shahada, which ties into the fundamental act that Allah Himself does to Himself. I have to stop here because I think I've overextended the limit of my khutbah. But the point is, bear these in mind, brothers and sisters. Meditate on these ideas that I've shared with you today. Hopefully, inshallah, let it sink into your consciousness, into your mind, into your heart, into your soul. Think about it, feel about it, and be moved by it. Because I see the faces of people here. I'll never forget one of my favorite hadith when I think the Prophet told, was it Bilal or someone said, I heard your steps in paradise, or something like that. And the Prophet himself could see on the faces of people their iman, or that this person will be a person of paradise or a person of hell. He could see that. And while I don't have the same firasa, the same perception as Rasulullah, as we get more evolved spiritually, and even not so evolved spiritually, you can tell the face of a mu'min. You can tell the face of a person who has striven to be a witnesser of Allah. You can tell the impact in a person's face, in his behavior, his ethics, or her ethics. The fact that this individual is remembered by Allah. That Allah has remembered you. Because that's the most important thing. Because the most dangerous thing on the day of judgment is when Allah says, Inna nasinakum. Today I have forgotten you. Allah's forgetfulness is not a lapse of memory. Those whom Allah forgets means those are the inhabitants of hell. And those whom Allah remembers are the inhabitants of paradise. And the quality of that remembrance is your maqam in paradise. And therefore the key to that is how you remember Allah. Because the quality of your dhikr determines, udhkuruni, Allah says, udhkuruni adhkurkum. Udhkuru, remember me, I will remember you. Now Allah's remembrance, at the end of the day, brothers and sisters, is the objective. So the objective of our presence here today is come to Jummah to remember Allah. But the purpose of this remembrance is Allah will remember us. So on the day of judgment, Allah will be in the book of those whom Allah has remembered. May Allah grant us this gift. May Allah grant us that we be the ones whom He remembers and that not the ones whom He has forgotten. May we be enabled to strengthen the quality of our shahada, the quality of our ibadah, the quality of our Islam, the quality of our iman, the quality of our ihsan. May Allah bless us. May He bless this community. May He bless our Imam. May He bless the leaders of this organization. May He guide them and make this whole community, this ummah, perfected mirrors of the light of Allah and the wisdom of Allah and the shahada of Allah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لكم. Pray to Allah that He answer our dua.